Whenever a narcissist hurts a super empath, they assume everything will keep following the same pattern that has always kept them in charge. They lie, they disappear, they twist reality, and then they repeat it all without much thought. What they never stop to see is that a super empath is not fragile, blind, or dependent. These are people who have lived through deep pain and hard experiences, and because of that, they've developed a powerful understanding of human behavior that the narcissist will never truly reach. When you wound someone like this, you are not just breaking trust. You are starting a transformation. It's the exact moment when the person who carried the emotional weight for so long finally sets it down, straightens their back, and looks at the narcissist with complete clarity. That clarity is terrifying to a narcissist because nothing threatens them more than someone who stops playing their games, refuses to be controlled, and sees through the mask they wear more clearly than they ever could themselves. The narcissist's betrayal shocks the super empath awake and destroys the illusion. For a long time, the super empath lives from a place of honesty, loyalty, and deep emotional awareness that many people wrongly see as weakness. Their kindness doesn't come from softness, but from a deep understanding of pain and human nature. This understanding makes them patient, forgiving, and able to see beyond appearances. The narcissist mistakes patience for ignorance, kindness for dependence, and emotional depth for something easy to exploit. I think the super empath sees the world with the same unstable and reactive mindset they use, never realizing that the empath's strength comes from self-awareness and a strong inner compass. When the betrayal finally happens and the narcissist crosses the one line that can never be repaired, something shifts inside the super empath. What appears is not rage, not bitterness, not a craving for revenge, but a calm so sharp and steady it feels almost surgical. A realization settles in that the person they tried to save never wanted to change, was never capable of equality, and was never willing to return the loyalty they received so freely. This realization arrives like a flood of light, exposing every red flag they once ignored, every excuse they once made, and every manipulation they once allowed to slide in silence. In that moment, the illusion falls apart completely. The empath's mind starts replaying memories, without emotion, only facts, as if they're finally watching the situation from the outside, instead of being trapped inside it. They see the empty promises, the pointless arguments, and the chaotic cycles meant to keep them unsure of themselves. They remember how affection was used as leverage, silence as punishment, and praise as bait. They recall all the times their intuition tried to warn them, and how they pushed it aside because their capacity to love was so strong. Now, with the betrayal undeniable, that intuition becomes their strongest guide, pointing straight toward the truth with calm certainty. The pain becomes the switch that removes every layer of deception the narcissist used for control. The empath's emotional vision sharpens, and they see the narcissist's behavior not as deep wounds that need healing, but as repeated patterns driven by a fragile ego that feeds off others. This awakening is intense because a super empath does not wake up halfway. Once awareness arrives, it is complete, final, and permanent. They do not look back with regret or longing because their view is no longer blurred by hope or imagined potential. They see the narcissist exactly as they are. Someone who survives by using people, someone afraid of being real, and someone who depends on outside validation to feel like they exist. This clear vision changes everything at once. The power the narcissist once held disappears because the empathist is no longer emotionally hooked into the game. They stop absorbing blame. They stop believing twisted stories. They stop chasing approval. They stop reacting to provocations meant to cause pain. The narcissist who depended on emotional reactions to feel superior is suddenly faced with someone who is no longer affected by their tactics. This is deeply disturbing for the narcissist because control is the core of their identity. Without emotional dominance, They feel exposed, small, and unsafe. As clarity keeps growing, the super empath begins taking back the parts of themselves they slowly gave up to keep the relationship alive. Self-confidence comes back. Intuition gets stronger. Boundaries become solid. Self-worth becomes unshakable. They reconnect with their passions, their path, and their inner voice. They finally understand that their kindness is a strength, not a weakness, and that anyone who tries to abuse it does not deserve access to it. With every new realization, the empath steps further out of the narcissist's psychological shadow. This separation doesn't happen through yelling or dramatic scenes, but through quiet certainty. When truth is fully understood, the empathy no longer needs explanations, apologies, or closure conversations. Understanding has already arrived. The illusion is gone. And maybe for the first time, the narcissist realizes they have been fully seen in a way they cannot twist, deny, or escape. This is the point where the balance of power completely flips. The super empath stands grounded in reality, while the narcissist clings desperately to the subes, false image they built over a lifetime. Without the empath's emotional energy to feed on, without their attention to confirm their importance, and without their forgiveness to soften consequences, the narcissist starts to unravel on the inside. The behaviors they once used to dominate now reveal how empty they really are. They may try to pull the empath using familiar tactics like charm, guilt, anger, or playing the victim. But none of it works anymore because awareness has made the empath emotionally protected. The betrayal meant to weaken them becomes the source of their strength, while at the same time destroying the narcissist's illusion of superiority. The empath's clarity becomes a mirror the narcissist cannot stand to look into. That reflection shows every insecurity, every lie, and every hollow layer beneath the surface. Once this awareness exists, the relationship can never go back to what it was because the super empath has finally seen the truth behind the mask the narcissist spent their life building. A super empath walking away tears down the narcissist's control and exposes their vulnerability throughout the entire connection. The narcissist lives off the emotional exchange with the empath. They depend on reactions, concern, attempts to fix things, and emotional effort that reflects the empath's depth. Every tear, every long explanation, every effort is taken as proof of dominance. They confuse emotional involvement with dependence and assume that because the empath cares deeply, they will stay forever. The narcissist's sense of power is built on the belief that the empath will always come back, always forgive, and always seek peace. What they never see coming is the quiet ending when the empath stops responding completely, not from anger, but from understanding. This moment stuns the narcissist because they believe their hold is permanent. NT. Hat the empath is chained by kindness rather than guided by self-respect. When the super empath pulls away, it is not loud or dramatic. It is not full of demands or emotional explosions. It is a silent taking back of their energy, a shift so deep it knocks the foundation of the narcissist's carefully arranged world. Suddenly, there is no reaction to control, no story to twist, and no emotion to weaponize. The empath refuses to play the role the narcissist wrote for them, and that refusal creates an emptiness the narcissist cannot stand. Their sense of identity depends on emotional control. Without it, they lose balance. They try old strategies like provoking jealousy, stirring conflict, switching between affection and cruelty, or seeking attention somewhere else, all to restart the chaos that once fed them. But the empath no longer responds with the same openness. Their silence becomes the strongest statement they could ever make. That silence exposes the narcissist's inner fragility. Without emotional fuel, the emptiness inside becomes impossible to hide. It feels like mental suffocation because the empath's absence makes it obvious how dependent the narcissist really was. The one who believed they were superior now sees they relied on the empath for validation, control, and emotional stability. The empath's leaving shows how little inner substance the narcissist actually has. This realization creates panic. They may act like they don't care, quickly replace the empath, or search for sympathy from others, but none of it fills the space that was left. The narcissist does not miss the empath as a person. They miss the reactions, the sway, and the emotional supply they once pulled so easily. The empath leaving also shatters the narcissist's inner story. Narcissists survive by believing they are special, untouchable, and always in control. That story only works when they stay in the roles they are given. When the empath stops playing along, the story falls apart. The narcissist can no longer convince themselves that they are all-powerful because the one person they could not break chose clarity over attachment. This is the quiet truth the narcissist never plans for. The super empath doesn't need to win, prove anything, or get revenge. Their power comes from walking away fully aware, leaving behind someone who now has to face themselves without distraction. And that is the consequence the narcissist fears most. Not that the empath is obsessed, needy, desperate, or stuck, but that the empath has moved on. This silence forces the narcissist to face a truth they deeply fear. The empath never truly needed them to survive. Over time, the narcissist starts to see that the drama, the emotional games, and the power struggles were only real because the empath kept answering and engaging. Once that engagement stops, everything collapses. Without reactions, without emotional fuel, the narcissist is left sitting in a silence that feels uncomfortable and even humiliating. They feel their control slipping away, and with it, their carefully built image starts to crack and weaken. Walking away becomes the empath's greatest strength because it takes real emotional discipline. It means choosing peace instead of chaos, choosing clear limits instead of endless self-sacrifice, and choosing truth instead of constant confusion. The empath isn't trying to punish or damage the narcissist. They are simply choosing themselves for the first time. They turn their focus inward and begin to heal, slowly rebuilding and remembering who they were before the narcissist's influence dimmed their confidence and inner light. This withdrawal traps the narcissists in a mental corner because it denies them what they crave more than anything else: attention and control. Narcissists live on emotional cycles. And when the empath refuses to take part, that cycle breaks. Without emotional control over the empath, the narcissist begins to unravel from the inside. Their attempts to pull the empath back become more frantic and obvious. They may come back with sudden apologies, dramatic promises, unexpected kindness, or big declarations of love that once would have worked. But the empath, now aware and awake, sees straight through it. They recognize manipulation hiding behind charm. The kindness that once kept them stuck is now seen through wisdom instead of guilt. They understand that real change cannot happen in someone who views relationships as tools instead of true connections. Their distance becomes a protective shield, guarding them from slipping back into patterns that once drained their energy and spirit. As time moves on and the distance widens, the narcissist's weakness becomes more visible. Their emotions grow more unpredictable. Their mask cracks more often and even slips in front of others. They lash out, blame everyone around them, and drown in self-pity because they cannot understand how they lost control of someone they believe they owned. This is the moment when their instability becomes impossible to hide. They are exposed not only to the empath, but also to themselves. They are forced to face the painful truth that their power was never real. It was borrowed from the emotional generosity of the person they tried to control and shrink. The narcissist's downfall begins with this withdrawal because nothing scares them more than becoming irrelevant. The empath's silence stands for independence, firm boundaries, and a clear refusal to be used again. It marks a permanent shift in power that cannot be undone. Once the empath sees clearly and pulls back their emotional energy, the dynamic changes forever. The narcissist, ripped of influence, is forced to face the emptiness they spent their whole life running from. That confrontation marks the start of their inner collapse. Betrayal awakens the super empath's hidden strength, turning pain into power. Inside every empath, there is a deep resilience that stays quiet until it's pushed too far. The narcissist, believing they are emotionally superior, never imagines that betrayal will switch that strength on. They mistake sensitivity for weakness. But sensitivity is awareness, and awareness becomes strength when fully seen. When the lies fall apart, when betrayal cuts deeply, and when the empath finally sees the full truth of what has been done to them, something powerful rises inside. A strong desire to take back their life, to stop shrinking themselves, and to stop giving endlessly without anything real in return begins to grow. Pain becomes a spark that reveals a deeper truth. Their worth was never about how much pain they could handle, but about the strength that was always there within them. At first, the pain feels shocking, not because the empath didn't sense betrayal coming, but because they hoped they were wrong. Over time, they stop accepting blame that was never theirs. They stop explaining themselves to someone who refuses to understand. Each boundary they set builds strength. Each truth they accept brings freedom. Pain that once felt crushing becomes the blueprint for transformation. It sharpens their awareness, strengthens their will, and reconnects them with parts of themselves they once silenced just to keep the peace. As their strength grows, the empath starts to recognize patterns they once misunderstood. They see how flattery created emotional dependence, how silence created fear, and how chaos was used as a tool of control. They understand how their kindness was used, how love was twisted, and how forgiveness was turned into a weapon. This awareness doesn't weaken them, it empowers them. For the first time, they step out of the mental fog and into clarity. They no longer feel responsible for saving, explaining, or sacrificing themselves. Betrayal becomes the final lesson that pushes them into real personal power. The empath's transformation unsettles the narcissist because it happens quietly and cannot be stopped. The narcissist may play with emotions, but they cannot control awareness. Once awareness takes root, the illusion breaks. No argument, charm, or guilt can pull the empath back into the old pattern. The empath becomes stronger not through fighting, but through detachment. They focus on healing and growth. They return to interests they abandoned, reconnect with friends they drifted from, and realign with values they once pushed aside. Each day of distance becomes an investment in themselves. Their strength is not driven by anger or hate, but by understanding. They realize the narcissist's betrayal was never about them personally. It was about the narcissist's inner emptiness. That realization becomes armor. The empath becomes steady, calm, and grounded. Reactions become thoughtful. Emotions become balanced. A deep calm settles in that the narcissist cannot shake, showing true emotional control. As the empath grows stronger, the narcissist loses control of the story they once told. They can no longer label the empath as weak, confused, or dependent. The empath's strength forces the narcissist to face limits they have avoided their entire life. The shift in power becomes undeniable. The narcissist grows unstable because they cannot understand how the empathist is no longer affected. They seek reactions but receive none. They attempt,